Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to the 9th episode of Futsal868 Corner Talks. Wishing belated greetings to the East Indian community on celebrations of Indian Arrival Day. Thank you for your undeniable stellar contribution to our twin island republic. My name is Geoffrey Edwards, series host and president of the Futsal Association of Trinidad Tobago. Futsal868 Corner Talks is an online meetup series where global sporting professionals share their experiences and perspectives on the fastest growing indoor sport in the world, futsal. Our hope is that the platform will sensitize and educate stakeholders whilst we sustainably grow the sport in Trinidad Tobago and the wider Caribbean region. Futsal868 Corner Talks, where sports professionals meet. Today, 31st of May, ends the month, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. Our mental health and the perseverance of this should be our priority. Arthur Ashe said, the goal is to be physically loose and mentally tight. As an organization, the Futsal of Trinidad Tobago, the Futsal Association of Trinidad Tobago celebrates mind, body, and soul. We do this by joining the awareness. Take a look.
Hi everyone, my name is Tanika James and I am a mental health advocate, and today I am partnering with the Trinidad and Tobago Futsal Association as we continue to commemorate Mental Health Month. So, 8 years ago I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which is a chronic mental illness that causes changes in mood, energy and activity levels. When I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, it was a really life-changing experience to me, and it has been a long journey towards healing. However, when I reflect on my life, I recognize that there were signs. As a child and as a teenager, I experienced extreme depression and anxiety. I also had challenges with sleep. There were times I slept too much, and then there were times I would not sleep at all. And I also had challenges with my appetite. There were times I would not eat anything at all. So today, I just want to encourage you that if it is you are having challenges with your mental health, you definitely know that something is wrong. I really want to encourage you to speak out and to get help. Speak to a trusted friend or family member, as well as reach out to a mental health practitioner in your area. I know that reaching out for help can be difficult, especially because we still have a lot of stigma attached to mental health and mental illness. But speaking up is the first step towards getting help, and I really want to encourage you to do so. Remember, everyone has a mental health, and there is no shame in having mental health challenges. Thank you, and take care.
The COVID-19 pandemic has affected many in different ways, with mental health issues and negative effects coming to the forefront. In our continued effort to educate and in keeping with our schedule, today we talk futsal and sports psychology. Our guests are the esteemed Fantastic Four from the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago. I'll introduce them based on their pair. We have Ms. Alexandria Olton. Good day, Ms. Olton.
Good evening.
We have Dr.Nadine Sammy. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
We have with us Ms. Amanda Johnson.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Last but not least, we have Mr. Jelani Robertson.
Afternoon, everyone.
We want to say thank you very much, guys, for being here with us. It is a very interesting and important topic, especially as we end the month of May, knowing that tomorrow begins the phase 3 of the reopening after COVID-19. So we want to go straight into it. We want to introduce our viewer to the discipline of sports psychology. A simple question goes out to any one of you all. What is sports psychology?
I can take this one. Sports psychology is it's very broad. So it's a really interesting field. I would say if we had to, to make it into a bite-sized piece or definition, it's really about helping athletes' well-being as well as their performance. That would be a one-liner. I don't know if anybody else from the team wants to add to that sort of foundational definition.
Nadine, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean,
Okay, great.
I would just add in that because we are still within the psychology field, what we do is fuse mental skills, which are what are taught across all psychological backgrounds, and then kind of tailor it so that it's more fitted towards the athlete's lifestyle. So it blends better for them versus a traditional psychologist per se.
Which runs straight into our next question, and I would like you to delve a little more into it. What does a sports psychologist do, and how can a young man or young lady listening become a sports psychologist?
I'll take this question. So that's sort of like asking the question, Geoffrey, of how long is a piece of string, because a sports psychologist does a lot, you know.
Yes.
We as practitioners engage in the use of psychological techniques, so you will find a lot of crossover with respect to certain techniques that we use, or that they're based on certain clinical techniques, but we simply apply it to a performance setting. So you might find sports psychologists on the sidelines working in field with athletes or in the gym, or you might find us in separate rooms having consultation or one-to-one sessions, or even group sessions with teams as well. And we use various psychological techniques based on the needs of the athlete or athletes at the time that we're working with, and their performance needs mentally that ultimately and hopefully lend to their physical performance. And then we sort of just custom each session to the needs of the athlete, but it's all grounded in psychological theory or the use of psychological techniques. So you'll find things like what we call cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, or you'll have utilization of concentration and focus, attentional techniques. So it really depends on the athlete or athletes we're working with at the time. And for someone to become a sports psychologist, I don't know if Jelani wants to chime in on this one to help me half the question.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So to become a sports psychologist, I could speak from, I guess, our own experience. And so I have a first degree in psychology, and then I went on to specialize with my master's in sport and exercise psychology. And I think that's the case for most of us, if not that specifically, or master's in sports science with a concentration in sports psychology, or anything really that gives you that grounding in sports science / psychology, and then a specialization at a higher level can, get you definitely along the path towards being a sports psychologist or sports psychology consultant, or however you'd like to title us.
So many persons might be looking at this show live or in recap, and many might ask the question, why is a sports psychologist important? I mean, I've heard about a coach, I've heard about the gaffer, I've heard about the manager, I've heard about the equipment manager. But why is a sports psychologist important? Jelani, back at you.
Yeah, sure. I would offer that a sports psychologist is important because athletes are often faced with environments and pressure to the likes of the average person would never come across. And one of the people best placed to try to empathize and then try to help them work through that is someone who has studied the human mind, and not only the human mind, but as mentioned before, in relation to performance. And not only then in relation to performance, but also, as Nadine mentioned, in relation to well-being. So as a sports psychologist, we try our best to make sure we can help athletes manage both sides of the coin, because really and truly you're a person first before you're an athlete. And to be able to perform best on your field, it's important that you as an individual are at your best. So I think that's where the importance of sports psychology and a sports psychologist lies, in that we are probably best placed to help athletes manage all the different variables, and to then help them just go out onto the field, the pitch, the court, whatever you like, and put out their best effort.
Anybody want to add to that? Or did Jelani do an exceptional job?
I think
He did an
pretty well.
exceptional job. Yeah. But I think I would love to jump in and say that, yes, primarily we are responsible for our work towards athletes, but we help all the persons involved within sport, because coaches also themselves experience a high amount of stress. So that what a lot of people don't know is that we also provide assistance towards coaches and other technical staff members, especially if they're not getting through to that particular athlete.
I know that I wanted to wait a little later to be able to ask this question, but with football and cricket being the two major disciplines in I would say more popular sports in the Caribbean, athletics being a third, depending on the country we're in. How important is sports psychology, or what's the view of sports psychology by the technical staff of national teams?
Jeffrey, can you repeat that question again? Sorry,
No
I didn't quite grasp it.
That's no problem. How important is sports psychology seen amongst national teams in their preparation for local, regional, and international tournaments? How is important is this discipline seen?
So is it to them?
Yes, it is to them.
I will speak from experience, and I think across the board, we've all actually seen an increase in the importance of it. There's been a greater request, especially within our departments, in terms of preparing for competition. So ultimately, they would come to us maybe a couple of months before a big tournament and ask us for assistance where we can develop some sort of mental skills program to help the athletes to get to where they need to be.
As we come to the end of May, which we know is mental health awareness, and I saw the great job that the sport company of Trinidad Tobago have done, as well as yourselves, in the many interviews that we'll have had throughout the month and also throughout this COVID period. How does mental health tie into, and mental health awareness ties into sports psychology? Dr. Sammy?
That's an excellent question, and it's something we as a team discussed certainly at the start of May. And I think Amanda brought it up about like what we could do and how we could contribute. I would go back to something Jelani said earlier, which is an athlete is a person first, an individual. So we sort of focus, we definitely hold athletes up on a pedestal. They sometimes seem non-human with what they can accomplish. But if you really look at it, this is a person who has hopes and dreams and needs and who deals with things that we as, let's say, lay people deal with every day. So it's incredibly important to consider, like I was talking about, their well-being, and this includes their mental health. So we talk about health all the time. We talk about what kinds of foods can we eat, what kind of exercise we're doing. Let's kind of look at this. Everybody has some sort of, as the athlete said in the video at the start, everybody has different levels of, well, health, I suppose. How do we then look at that in the mental sense? Are you healthy? Do you process emotions in a healthy way? So everything kind of ties in back to the athlete as the person, and how are they doing mentally. I don't know if that I guess that wasn't as streamlined as I hoped for, but I hope the core message is there. Again, I'd encourage you to
what can be done to bring more awareness as regards to sports psychology and also mental health awareness in the sporting world? And let's be there on Trinidad Tobago. What do you think we need to do?
Who's got dogs though? That's what I'm curious about. I feel like that's
it's not mine. I can say that for sure.
Yeah, it drowned out the question again on my end.
Yeah,
so
Geoffrey, can you please repeat the question?
All right, so we need to find out who has the dogs, because like to do some
claim
stuff on my end.
So we're good.
All right, no problem.
Sorry, do you mind repeating? Yeah.
No problem. I was asking what can be done as regards to bringing more awareness to mental health and also to sports psychology in the sporting arena, in the sporting world, and I wanted to zoom in more as regards to Trinidad and Tobago. How can we get more information? How can we bring more awareness?
I think, Geoffrey, that's a great question, and one that we haven't quite found the best solution for yet, because obviously then we would have popularized it by now. But I think, a large part of it is destigmatizing mental health and that level of vulnerability that comes with mental well-being, and facing mental ill health, or even just enhancing your mental wellness. And then in particular with respect to sports psychology and in the world of athletes among in Trinidad and Tobago, I think one of the best ways is by other athletes speaking about it. I think because we can advocate for it all day, because of course we are the practitioners who believe in it, but of course until we hear testimonials or for want of a better word, recounts of athletes' experiences with mental health, it is a great impact. I've actually seen, the influence that athletes, and particularly national athletes and athletes who are recognized in Trinidad, can have on young minds and young, developmental athletes who are hoping to come up in a sport or a particular sport and athlete that they look up to. And if they advocate for mental health and mental well-being and the use of sports psychology to enhance performance, I think that's certainly one of the best routes to fast tracking or bringing the discussion of mental health to the front burner. So
I love that answer, because that goes straight into, he may not be an athlete, Mr. Alistair Sandy, but let's take a look at what he has to say, noting that after this break, we will focus on the athlete's mind. You're watching Futsal 868 Corner Talks with the fantastic four from the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago. We speak futsal and sports psychology. We'll be right back.
Good day. My name is Alistair Sandy, and I am a clinical psychologist. I'm also the owner of Sandy Shores Psychological Services. I just wanted to talk a little bit on behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago Futsal Association about mental health. One of the major mental health issues we have is the tendency to lump all mental health illnesses under one category or one label, and that label is the term crazy. Now, apart from being not very helpful, it's also inaccurate to do so, because there are at least 600 types of mental illnesses. People who suffer from mental illnesses, regardless of whichever type they suffer from, deserve respect, understanding, empathy, and access to treatment. Now, some challenges people may be experiencing or need treatment for could vary from anything between eating disorders to hearing and seeing things that aren't actually there. Now, just because you may be suffering from mental health challenges does not make you a weak person. The best thing to do is to try to remedy the situation by seeking treatment at the local health center or a private practitioner. Remember, your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And this is me, Alistair Sandy, saying, embrace your mental health.
So welcome back to the Futsal 868 Corner Talks. You just heard from Mr. Alistair Sandy, which added value to, our first segment from Ms. Olton as regards to understanding that, we really have to know that we have to destigmatize this aspect of mental health and psychology. It's not about going to St. Anne's anymore, people. We need to really understand it's more than that. To those who are just joining us on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, today we talk futsal and sports psychology with the team from the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago, which we want to say thank you very much for being here with us. In this segment, we discuss the athlete's mind. And I go straight into it, and I go straight at you, Jelani. What is the athlete's mind?
What is the athlete's mind? So let me just say that definitely it will vary from athlete to athlete, sport to sport, country to country. So I'm covering my bases here. There's no one right answer. But if I can offer a guess, I guess the athlete's mind is one typically where decisions have to be made at record speed in most cases, record speed with consequences and outcomes playing through minds at like all the time. So there's this pressure that's always on them. There's, in most of the instances, there's a lot of fans, there are people you don't want to disappoint. So there's pressure, there's decisions, and then, technical skill and ability and things I'm supposed to know how to do automatically by now. So the athlete's mind is a very busy place, I would offer.
Well, before we continue, we want to say, just check this message out. He's very proud of the fantastic ball. Good day to you, Mr. Otley.
No bias there.
Thanks, Toby.
Cheers.
So let's continue. Why is a strong mind important in sport? Dr. Sammy?
Great question. Do you know that a strong mind is important all around to everyone? So we should really all be trying to work on strengthening our minds. As Jelani explained, in sport, it is about fast decisions with serious consequences. So a strong mind in sport is important because of that. So let's take an example. Hopefully everybody's familiar with cricket. So I want you to visualize a batsman. So he's standing at the crease getting ready to face a delivery. A fast bowler is running down the track at him. And the ball is delivered with such speed. And I mean, you could think about it with tennis as well. You think about Serena Williams serving a ball, the speed that ball is coming at you. Now, you have, in many cases, milliseconds to take in all the information that is happening. So we'll use the cricket example. So the bowler's hand, how they're holding the ball, what way the hand turns, where the ball lands on the pitch, how it swings. And then, so you have to process all of these different cues and then make a decision on how best to play the ball. That is a lot. And so a strong mind involves several things. One, it's about what you pay attention to in that moment. It's about remaining calm and focused. It's about making a decision that results in positive consequences. And that's just on the pitch. If we think about the sporting industry now, how much pressure there is in terms of training and media and other things that happen in the world, like COVID, then there's a whole host of other things as well. So the strong mind is really important on not just the field, the court, the pitch, the pool, wherever it is that you are, because you want to ensure that you're performing well to the best of your ability. And it's important off the field as well. So you're making the most of your training, so you're able to manage your time so that you can still, take care of your children or engage with your partner or work your 9 to 5. So there's a lot going on, and a strong mind is sort of at the center of all of those things.
Anybody want to add any more to that by chance?
Geoffrey, I do want to say one thing though. I'm not a fan of the phrase "strong mind" because it suggests that if you don't have it, you have a weak mind.
I love that. I stand corrected, and I love that.
So we talk of a resilient mind or an adaptable mind or an open mind. So we try to encourage, because in sports psychology as well, at least particularly with practicing and language, we don't try to suggest that good or bad or success and fail all the time or strong and weak, because it then suggests that there's a critique if you don't necessarily master a particular skill, mental skill. So if you're not as resilient through COVID as you normally are, then your mind is weak. It send the wrong messages to athletes and us as individuals. I mean, I do it with myself. I have to find myself saying, Alex, change your language that you use describing your mental skills. So humans have a tendency to do that.
Well, I definitely have to make sure to change all my questions and how she gets to resilience.
We do like the word resilience.
If I may pause, I don't necessarily see it that way. I don't think we need to necessarily work in terms of opposites of strong and weak. You could have strong and less strong. It's an interesting dynamic. Like, I definitely appreciate where Alex is coming from, but it's I guess is the key thing is, like, Alex and I can disagree, but it's opening up the conversation and it's challenging how we see things. Maybe.
But of course, we all practice differently as well. So we may share the same, value or the same, theoretical, constructs that we use with our practice, but we may practice in different ways. So there is the uniqueness of encountering what psychologists, I guess.
It's interesting that you said that, Alexandria, and I'm agreeing with you, because it's one thing that you learn in children's psychology. My parents were primary school teachers for over 45 years. Both of them, as a matter of fact, and they had a library full of books of children's psychology. And they always tell you, my parents always said, and I have a 17-year-old son.
Okay.
They always correct me by saying, do not say a child is, let's give an example, because he's not, and I want to make that emphatically clear. Do not say he's a liar. Say that he is lying.
Okay.
And I totally agree with you when it says we should not say there's a strong or a weak mind, because that defines an individual. So I will change today. If I definitely have learned something today, whereby I'll change it to a resilient mind. So with that being said, how do we help develop an athlete to have a resilient mind?
Amanda?
Yeah, I know, right? We speak so frankly, like, oh, we're going to get them to develop a resilient mind, and we make it seem like it's just a pill that you take and then the next day you're better and you have all these things. But a big part of the process in which we do is having athletes be very self-aware, aware of what factors affect them, and be honest with themselves. And I want to digress a little bit, because I didn't get to touch on the point where we spoke about how do we make it more, commonplace within everything. And I think a big part of it is saying things like this, that how do we get them to be more resilient, instead of looking at, like, how do we start a conversation if an athlete needs to come to a coach and say, hey, coach, I'm really not feeling good today. And instead the coach telling them, well, you need to be mentally tough. And then that again creates a negative stigma towards sports psychology on a whole, if we look at it, because it's not allowing someone to be themselves. So in the process of becoming more resilient, a big part of that takes the entire holistic approach. Everyone needs to be on board for this, because we can't, as professionals, send one message and then they go out onto the field and get a completely different message. So that's probably, to me, step one of becoming more resilient, is having the whole body understand that. And then from there, each one of the individuals helping the athlete become more aware of how they react to certain things, because that's the first step. And then from there, developing different, coping skills to be able to deal with it, because the fact is that those issues never disappear. We just learn to cope with them better.
Do recreational athletes need sports psychology? A sweater, a fet match baller, a man who just go in and play a little hockey in Queen's Park, a weekend warrior. Do they need sports psychology?
I'm a weekend warrior. I need sports psychology.
Doc, talk to me.
Sorry, is that me?
Yeah.
Do they need sports psychology? Well, do you know what? I genuinely believe, and again, feel free to disagree with anyone, but I genuinely believe that everyone can benefit from sports psychology. And there's different levels, right? So we might have one-on-one sessions every week with an athlete, or we may have a group session with a team, every other week, or we may have check-ins with athletes. So sports psychology involves lots of different ways of reaching out to somebody, and I do believe that they can benefit. Whether it's a necessity, I don't know about that. It depends on your motivation, your goals, etc. But I do think they can benefit, yes.
Definitely.
Suggestions to parents and coaches to building an athlete's resilient strength. Doc, Alexandria, I got it right. I had a
Strong.
I had
I'm very impressed.
Resilient mind. Yes. So let's get it again. Suggestion to parents and coaches to build an athlete's resilient mind.
How much time you have, Geoffrey?
5 minutes, Alex.
I think coming off of what Amanda was discussing, I think the first and best step is certainly speaking a common language in the way we speak about emotions or situations, perceptions of situations, various environments that athletes, particularly junior athletes, would be placed in. So now you're entering a new dynamic. Junior athletes are often also students, are often adolescents, also trying to navigate their way through that very confusing time of life, engaging in different kind of social interactions as well. So you have a number of factors playing a role in a junior athlete's life. And so with respect to parents and coaches, I think the first step is certainly speaking a communal language, making or creating an environment where, what we call developing emotional intelligence is okay. Identifying what you're feeling, so knowing the name of an emotion instead of just, many a time, and a lot of us have experienced this when you ask an athlete how they're feeling. I normal, I'm good, I bad, but identifying a particular emotion. I'm angry, I'm anxious, I'm confused, I'm, focused, I feel confident. Knowing what those mean and what trigger those things for you and how to manage those emotions when you feel them is certainly an important part of it. So, it's a hard ask for coaches to teach technical and mental skills, and we by no means ask of that, but we certainly ask for support. So we ask that environments are created when you leave the sports psychologist, you enter an environment which is your sporting environment. You're able to practice the mental skills and not be peacong for it or seen as because of it. And certainly that common language and understanding that language. Comes to a coach for feedback and wants to take control of their goal setting and so on, the coach doesn't laugh and say you don't know what your goals are or certain things. They help them and they guide them along, and particularly parents as well can play, of course, this role because they certainly interact with athletes the most. They live at home with them. The moment they get in the car and have a discussion with mom and dad or guardian, whoever it might be, to the time they sleep, wake up, the first person they see is their parents. So that they can certainly foster a very positive mental environment for athletes as well, to then begin to develop that resiliency and positive practices. So
we're going to straight to our viewers, and we have on YouTube Pat Charles is saying that she believes that recreational athletes need sports psychology. We want to thank you to Pat for joining us on our YouTube channel, Futsal868. And we have a question from Mr. Constantine Constant, the head coach of the men's national futsal team, who asks each of you all, what is your favorite technique in working with an individual and a team? What are your what's your favorite sports psychology technique?
I will jump in with this one. I would say one of mine is to help athletes reframe their self-talk. So naturally, we respond to an event and we don't really have control over like that initial rush of emotions or rush of thoughts that come into play. But helping athletes recognize that, take just a moment and then reframe how they should speak to themselves based on what are the most important factors going on right now and how that would help them.
Anyone else?
Yeah, sure. So I think it seems very basic and it's very much associated with sports psychology practice, and that is goal setting. And goal setting for me it forms literally the basis of every bit of work I do with every athlete and team. And it's because there's such energizing and motivating power in goals that it's an incredible resource, and it helps to just kind of direct attention and energy, right? There's that saying where attention goes, energy flows, and these kind of things. And that's exactly what motivation, what goals help to provide. So yeah, definitely helping athletes to set reasonably time goals, relevant goals. Following the whole SMART list is one of my favorite things to do with athletes, individual or team.
I can tell you guys that, to be honest with you, we get a lot of questions from our Facebook and YouTube. So we go to one from this gentleman that you all may know quite well. He asks, how important is routine?
Oh, did one of us did that? I feel like, was it Amanda for a video?
Yeah, I mean, routine is extremely important. It kind of just helps. I would say it's like you have an engine and the engine's not not working really well. And then once there's a routine in how you do it, it helps things flow a lot better. So routine is essential. And now I have to remember, you don't always have to be rigid in routine as well. We have to have flexibility and adaptability inside of there. So routine is important to just have a habit going, and we want to always build healthy habits. So I don't know if Tobias is questioning specifically to a routine in life or a routine, a competition routine or a pre-competition routine, but essentially routines are important because it's that little kickstart that gives you what you need to be able to perform well across the board in anything that you need to do.
Mr. Otley, if it is your listening, please add a little more value to your question. Just go back quickly, and I'm happy that this person asked this question, Ms. James. So we can just quickly answer before we continue with the questions that our team has put together. And Jelani, this is back at you. I know you have answered in the first segment, but can you give a little more detail as regards, or can you repeat yourself as regards this question, please?
Sure, no problem. So if you would like to study sports psychology, the route that most of us have taken is having an undergraduate degree in psychology itself or general sports science, and then going on to specialize in a master's in sports psychology, sport and exercise psychology, or some variation of the sort. There are some programs in the UK and the US which offer sports psychology as an undergraduate degree. So you could study it there in a bachelor's capacity before going on to specialize in a master's capacity. And there are programs the world over for sports psychology, sport and exercise psychology, where you can go study at both levels.
Sorry. I know he has his favorites. That's why I asked for
recommendations. I mean, there's a great school in the west of London known as Brunel University. They do okay when it comes to sport and exercise psychology. They're all right.
Half the team. So I mean,
which professional EPL team is near there? Which team?
The team. So actually, funny enough, a team I worked in close contact with following my master's degree was Queen's Park Rangers, who at the time, they've not been in the Premiership for a little while, but
The old fogies like myself, we remember the days of Queen's Park Rangers.
There we go. There we go.
I just want to add one thing, if possible, just onto Jelani's lovely little description. Is if you're looking at a program as well, I will suggest ensure that there is some research aspect of the program as well. I think that's super important, especially as upcoming sports psychologists engage in some empirical research. So, because some programs can have, a non-thesis based program or so on, but writing a thesis and producing research also really bolsters the practice. So.
So from the amount of questions we are getting from our viewers, it clearly shows that we need to have round 2 of this discussion. And I'm putting in that plug one time, that request one time.
Sneaky.
So let's. What do you have against my Sundays, Geoffrey?
So if it is, we may continue. We had the COVID-19. Again, repeating myself, tomorrow is the opening of phase 3 for Trinidad and Tobago. Tomorrow is also the opening of the first phase in Britain. Other countries are still under lockdown. Can you make suggestions of how athletes can cope during this COVID-19. A friend of mine went this morning to the tracking station, and she said, Geoffrey, it was ram cram. It probably looked like Josie's Jamishness, you know. She said there were so many persons and of all different sizes and shapes who were there just to get in some fresh air. And I know you all would have dealt with this before. So during this whole COVID-19, how do our athletes deal with this?
I don't think there's one.
Not all at once.
Yeah, there's no one size fits all for this, you know. I think we've said this over and over again, but that awareness, I mean, Alex has mentioned a lot about emotions and understanding what your emotions are. That's like a really big step in it. Being able to express yourself and say, I'm feeling this way, and also identifying how you want to feel. So there is your hair on one end and then hair on the other, and we want to be able to like merge both of them so that you feel that you're in a space where you're okay or able to cope, you know. So I would say one of the first ones would be to identify how you feel about the different activities that you have to take part in, and be able to express that clearly to yourself so that you know where you're at. I would give somebody, we can do a train, guys. Let's jump on and somebody else could add on.
Okay. I won't mind picking up after you.
Yeah.
So I feel like this too. So identifying, being honest with yourself, and it relates to what Amanda was talking about when she mentioned awareness earlier. I spoke with a group recently, and what I did is encourage them to break it down into different categories. So think, what can I do for myself physically? What can I do mentally? And what can I do specific to my sport? Because sometimes it can seem very overwhelming. So if you just break things down into manageable portions, then you could start to think about very practical examples. Some of which might include Alex or Jelani. Any specific suggestions?
Yeah.
I guess what I would say on top of that, because those are two great starts to getting something going, and but at the same time, not necessarily sitting in every emotion and experiencing and analyzing every emotion, or trying to be strict and productive all the time, because now more than ever, we have to prove productivity because we're at home and everybody, is at home. We have to show we're being productive. But at the same time, if you're not feeling great and you don't want to sit in the emotion all day, you don't have to overanalyze why you might be feeling like that. It might just be emotional process. So the on it sometimes is not necessary, and similarly not always adhering to the productivity plan, but having it there so that you can rely on it. So when you're not feeling, it's not that you don't have a plan, it's just I'm not feeling, but tomorrow I'll tackle my plan. Okay. So Jelani likes to be kind, so I didn't do that.
So I think the only thing I could possibly add to that and going off of that is knowing your support group and who you have in your corner, and knowing, who is for you and who you can turn to. If I feel X, then I know I could turn to Y. And if I feel A, I could turn to B. So this is recommendations, I guess, not only for athletes, but for anybody, right? Your support group, your circle in these times are of the utmost importance, and just having that ability to talk through things, and even just maybe sometimes you might not even be talking through something, might just be you need a distraction, so you talk to somebody else. You need a laugh, so you talk to somebody else. So I think in this time, so yes, definitely, if you don't, not sitting within the emotion and letting it overwhelm you, but also just reaching out, talking to somebody who can definitely support you.
So yesterday I had the opportunity to rise and shine and do a 7-kilometer run with a fellow Saint, Zimbumba. Shameless plug.
With you saying very spelling,
right?
After our run, he was like, boy, since this COVID thing, this is the first time I come out and run, and this is a guy who does marathons. extremely fit. We will sweat for an hour and a half, and he'll go and run a 5K afterwards. And he said, but not only that, is that I'm suffering from insomnia. I'm going to bed all kind of 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. He's not a professional athlete. He's a recreational athlete. He's a weekend warrior. What would you all say to someone like that who is going through a situation like that? Because there's a lot of persons who I have spoken to, formally and informally, who are going through different scenarios given this abnormality that we are experiencing now.
I think Nadine is our resident sleep expert, so Dr. Sammy might be best placed to respond.
Right. Well, it's an interesting one, because I think the first thing to do, and we've said it before, I think everybody said it, is that everybody's experience is different, because people are different, or circumstances are different. Experience, we're all different, so we really need to find what works for us. So anything we say is really a guide for you to think about and maybe digest and move from there. Regarding sleep specifically, it actually has to do with something Tobias asked the question about, and that Amanda mentioned as well. When we talk about routine, let's include sleep in that routine. So we did a chat with our comms team from SPORTT recently on Instagram, and I gave the example, think about a time or a night you really didn't get enough sleep and you wake up the next morning. How do you feel? Probably not so great. And imagine that happening over the course of a few nights. Sorry, those are parrots on the course by me. It's not Jelani this time. Anyway, so think about that, how that makes you feel. So this goes back to paying attention to your body and figuring out what's best for you. So I would definitely encourage having a sleep routine. Try to go to bed around the same time every night. Try to wake up around the same time every morning. You certainly try to be more stringent with this in the week. Maybe at the weekend, you could give yourself an extra hour in bed, whatever that is. But you're trying to retrain your body, that circadian, that rhythm to your days and nights. So very practical one, try to have a sleep routine. We talked about sleep hygiene as well, practicing good sleep hygiene. So, my phone is right next to me right now. Love this thing. Love social media. It's very tempting when you get into bed, check your social media when you wake up to do that. I would encourage you to actually give yourself a time period that you're not going to check that phone or laptop or expose yourself to blue light before you go to bed. Try to make your room as comfortable as possible. Is it a temperature you like? Get a thinner blanket if it's too hot, etc. So think about very practical things related to sleep hygiene that you can do. Pay attention to your body. Can you do a very simple breathing technique? There's something called progressive muscle relaxation that you can also do. It's a very physical process that you can use to help relax your body. So I don't know if this would be recommended, but I would say one of the best things you can do is go onto Google, type in something like sleep routine, good sleep hygiene. Be aware that not everything you see there is going to be good information. So be critical when you look at the information and use things as a guide. So I've mentioned breathing techniques. Go pop that in, see if you find something that resonates with you and go from there. So just to recap, because that was very long, sleep routine, practice good sleep hygiene, think about physical things that you can do for your body, like breathing routines and progressive muscle relaxation. And that's for sleep specifically. I will cut now because I think everybody's fed up with me.
No, of course not. Two things before I continue, before my press brothers, because I also went presentation called San Fernando, so before they get down on me, that's a big up, proud to be press as well. I'm not confused, just had the best of both worlds. But also as regards to those birds chirping in the background, Nadine, just to let you know that we have international viewers and they probably wishing that they could be a part of this Caribbean setting. So let's give them something to look forward to. We need some tourism in Trinidad and Tobago. But there's something that's happening right now as well. The Bundesliga is open, which is so good for us sport fans. But there are no fans. There's no fans. How does an athlete both athletes and spectators deal with fanless events from a sports psychology standpoint?
So I'm willing to take the athlete portion. Somebody else could maybe handle the spectator part.
Jelani, that's so easy.
I'm a team player. I don't want to take everything. You know what I mean? What I would offer and things that have definitely come to mind while watching the Bundesliga myself, since the resumption, because I was starved for sport like the world, is the lack of fans. Actually, I've seen some possibly positives come from it. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So for the first thing, the officials and the officiating. So there's something known as like home advantage in sports psychology, and there's some reasons as to why people think it may happen. And the research suggests that one of the reasons that there's the idea or some influence of home advantage is because the fans influence the referees, right? And the referees make decisions more often than not in favor of just not to upset the home fans, right? Now with fanless events, you're seeing, I think officials are not as pressured to make decisions in favor of, whoever's home stadium they're playing in. And so right off the bat, that immediately seems to me like it's making one competition a little bit more fair, a little bit more impartial, a little bit more objectively judged, right? Which would be a good thing for competition. I think in addition to that, I think there's a stat that came out after the first week of the resumption of the Bundesliga that live ball or ball in play time on average went up by nearly 2 full minutes between the average for the season versus the first week back. So I think it was 57 minutes live ball play before and 59 plus minutes live ball play on the resumption. And that kind of suggested to me as well that maybe players are also feeling less pressure to make decisions because there are no fans in the stands, typically somebody picks up the ball 25, 30 yards out from goal in home, and you know the chant from the crowd. You know what I mean? And so it makes me believe that maybe players are taking more time to make better decisions with the ball, and so not rushing to make a decision that might be suboptimal. So keeping the ball in play, trying to build play up some more, and these kind of different things. I think those two examples, at least from the athlete and playing perspective, gives an idea of how fanless events are impacting the game. Anybody has a support?
Before somebody answers, one of the things that I've read as well is, or should say heard, is that coaches are screaming less, but there's better, more effective and efficient communication amongst team members, which is affecting performance even better. And that's very interesting. And your point on the whole is very interesting, Jelani. I want to say thank you very much, Chad. Just to tell anybody else as regards to the spectators, how is a fanless event affecting them from a psychological point of view?
I think I haven't really thought of it from a spectator view, but I would say, being a spectator myself, if we think about the reaction to something is usually amplified when there are more people around. So we could think about this in any situation. So maybe for fans, we can look at it on the fact that maybe how are you reacting differently? Are you able to be less biased towards things? So we're building off of what Jelani is saying. So you're able to not be influenced by those around you, but be able to take in things yourself instead of reactions. Well, I mean, a lot of the times, who's sitting next to us? We've all been in a TTFA match where everyone thinks they're a coach in the stands. And even though you think you see something, somehow you end up agreeing with the person next to you because they're making such a strong, statement about something. So maybe for the fans, it comes where we become more aware of what we actually see and like, and more aware of those things. I'm just going off the bat here. I'm not sure anybody could jump in.
Well, that's really interesting because I hadn't thought of it like that before. So I think that's a cool point. I just like to add in sports psychology, we also consider social variables and how that influences certain things. I know, so Jelani mentioned West London. I just want to big up Exeter in the Southwest, which is where I went to school. But the reason, bleed green, the reason I do this is because we had a League Two team, right? And I used to go watch League Two football. And well, Jelani, bear with me. I used to go watch League Two football, right? But I really enjoyed. We used to get discounted student tickets, which is how I was able to afford to go. But there was a huge socio-cultural element to go into a game. There was a preamble, being there amongst other people who were supporting Exeter. I don't know, there was songs and chants, and there was a real, the atmosphere was electric. And I think a lot of fans who are accustomed going to see live sports, it affects their sense of community in a negative way. And I think having to physically isolate has certainly been affecting our sense of community. But that's something that's very important when it comes to live sports. Jelani and we went to Carifta trials, a few months ago now. But there's something about being in the stands as opposed to, I don't know if you agree, yeah, as opposed to watching it on TV. So that will probably be influencing a spectator's well-being as well, missing that sense of community. So it is a tough one. I think, things will change and we will adapt as we go along. But but it's a definite difference.
That's the resilience plug.
Exactly. Well, due to COVID-19, one of the things that the Futsal Association of Trinidad Tobago encouraged our training pool for the men's national futsal team was to send us videos as regards to what they're doing. For us, we termed the series Sweat, the fitness journey. So after this break, we'll focus on developing the futsal mind. But take a look at one of our participants, Mr. Dwayne Edwards, in his video of Sweat, the fitness journey. Welcome back to the final segment of the Futsal868 Corner Talks. To those who are just joining us on the Facebook page and YouTube channels, today we talk Futsal and Sports Psychology. I must say that it is one of the more interesting shows given the amount of interaction we have had with our viewers, which has led us to, we have to come and do this again. We have with us the members of the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago. We hope that they are enjoying my company as much as I'm enjoying theirs. And before we break, we discussed the athlete's mind, and we had a lot of discussion as regards to that. In this one, we want to zoom in more specifically to the sport of futsal. In 2018, our girls went to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and that's where the first time I met Miss Amanda Johnson, where she did a session with our girls. Just to give you all a pretext, is after our first game where we lost 11-1 to, I think it was Thailand, the girls rebounded and they beat Tonga 5-2. And was it because of Amanda's session? I definitely want to know from the girls, and we definitely will have that discussion thereafter. But with our young, given the fast-paced nature of the game of futsal, with the high number of goals and the importance of each player to always be in the game, compared to football, where a right back or a left back could have a few moments to rest. With futsal, you always go in. Can you tell us how do our athletes, our futsal players prepare psychologically for competition in an environment such as this and a variant of the sport of football such as this?
I mean, to start off with, I'll kick us off.
I was hoping Amanda start us off, but
I can start us off if you want.
Yeah, start us off.
I mean, for futsal, it's very, like you said, fast-paced and dynamic. So what are some of the main factors or psychological factors that would come into play there? Obviously, attention awareness, your focus, your concentration, because at that time, you have to be able to know exactly what is going on. And in the second, something else is going on. So having that high level of attention and concentration going on. And then also with a team with futsal, it's about 5 people on a team. It's 5 people on a team. So that means that synchronicity going on needs to be there. So that team chemistry needs to be there, and that understanding and those relationships between each of the players need to be very essential. Also, because it's really fast-paced, again, we use this word resilience. We need to be able to bounce back from little mistakes, bounce back from if a goal is made, because at the end of the day, that is not the end, and we still have to be able to continue. So I would say, based on the work that I did with the girls, those were the things that I focused on, so that they would be able to cope with all the pressures that would be going on, especially being, young players going into a first-time huge event, So those are the things that I focused on.
And it's interesting that you mentioned huge. Before anybody else continues in answering that question, you mentioned huge. One of the things the girls said in the as a report from the manager, and also informal discussions was them. It was first and foremost it was the first time many of them traveled to the South American continent to play in an arena with over 5,000 persons. And like futsal, it's just like basketball, where you have the spectators extremely close to play. In our first game, we could have been 3 goals up, which the narrative could have been different. And there's something important that you said. We missed 3 chances, and then in the counter attack, they scored 3 goals on us. And you could see that the girls were dejected. You could see that the entire energy, they were deflated. And it was just interesting that they actually rebounded in the second game. So again, to the rest of the panel, can you give us some more tips as regards to helping our futsal players who will be looking in, given this variant of the game, very fast pace? We call it the T20 of football. How do you all prepare? How do you all suggest that players and coaches prepare psychologically?
So if I am to jump in, Amanda made a great point about, so due to the fast-paced nature of the game, a lot of it hinges on how much you know your teammates, and how well you know your teammates and what you know about them, right? So I compare the speed of futsal and its workings, I guess, to basketball, right? The pace of play, the non-stop action, and it's almost like you have to play futsal plays in advance. You have to know, you have to have an idea, I guess, of what's going to happen or what you think is going to happen before you even receive the ball, or before the ball gets to the person who is getting it before you. So I think anticipation skills are massive when it comes to futsal, and you're only able to develop that from getting that comfort level with your teammates, knowing that, okay, when I receive the ball out here on the wing, I know John is going to be running through the middle, and I can just lay it off one time for him to be there. And then when I lay it off, I continue my run, and he knows I'm going to be in the corner. So having that level of familiarity and, I guess, knowledge of your teammates is absolutely key, I think, to being able to make those decisions in quick time, because you know what they're going to be before they happen. So you can execute it and not have to spend that extra millisecond thinking, and because that extra millisecond could be the difference between you retaining possession and you losing possession.
Which also leads to a goal.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Anyone else?
Just to jump in there, Geoffrey, I think a major part as well is, again, coming back to the speed at which futsal is played. You have to be able to differentiate between, and I don't know if my colleagues would agree with me, but the practice mindset and the competitive mindset. So, what everybody calls getting in the zone, there is, and it comes again with team cohesion, team chemistry, team understanding, that we hear the phrase treat the game as another practice session, but at the same time, we don't want to analyze it like a practice session because it's a game. So we want it to be fluid. We need to be sort of reliant, and this is when our as we would say, our muscle memory kicks in because it's very quick. And so our attentional cues, where you look, where you read to make your decisions, whether it's someone's foot, whether it's the shift in their body to know the direction of the kick, that is incredibly important. It comes back to then why a man would have focused in on attentional cues, concentration, and focus. And it's important that they kind of zone in on maybe three major concepts, but not overanalyzing, analyzing the mental skills they would have practiced. They would have to practice these things because, of course, as we like to say, practice makes perfect. So these things have to come with regular routine and repetition. So mental skills, as much as physical skills, need practice. So that when we get into that session, that situation of a very fast-paced, swift-moving environment, we're able to not necessarily have to think, and as Jelani said, that millisecond to then where to go, who to kick to, should I just shoot, the defenders in front of me, sort of. We just make those decisions on a somewhat subconscious level because our mental skills have kicked in. We've read those cues ahead of time and made those plays. So we're not thinking, okay, this might be the play ahead, but in fact, we just read it that way and played it as such. So it comes with very strong practice of concentration, focus, and the ability of shifting from that practice mindset and trying to analyze, okay, where do I need to improve my technique and so on, to shifting into this is not the time to improve technique or clutter my mind with what I can do to improve this technique right now. It's simply make decision, and make the play kind of thing.
In this month of May, the beginning of the month, we were supposed to, and I said we in terms of the men's national futsal team, should have been participating at the CONCACAF Futsal Championship, along with other mega events such as the Olympics, has been cancelled. For us, the World Cup would be next year, so most likely our qualifiers will be next year. What are the suggested mechanisms for athletes and coaches to cope with this extension in terms of preparation? Dr. Sammy?
What I would actually say, so Alex, prepare, because I think I'm gonna ask you to take this one because it's related to something Alex and I spoke about and that you spoke about on an Instagram live that you did, which is about formulating new goals and also redefining success. So we have no control over the changes that have taken place. So I think that's the first part of it, is accepting that, that's out of our control. But what are the things that are in our control? And then how do we I guess what kind of movements we make in based on that? But I'm gonna ask Alex if you could sort of talk a little bit more, if that's okay with you.
Sure, just pass the buck, that's okay. No, but it was sort of so as Nadine would have said, first of all, it's recognizing what's within our control versus what isn't. We cannot change the fact that now it's been extended, so we have to accept that to an extent, because we can't go back in time and change COVID and resume where we left off. We now have a new timeline to work with. And so as a result, we have to set new goals and expectations, and where we might have been in preparation for the competition that would have taken place in May, we are now, at a different point in our training and technical training and so on. So we have to redefine what our expectations are as coaches, as a team, what we expect to, or how we expect to perform in any future competitions. How much time do we have to prepare realistically between now in that competition, given the nature of this COVID situation, it's continually changing and fluid. So our plan can no longer be as rigid as, okay, season starts here, ends here, competition here, we train at this point in time. Now it has to be, we have to create a sort of a fluid schedule and redefine the goals, the expectations, and ultimately how we define success as a team for the forthcoming set of competitions. Now that we weren't able to move as we had once planned.
Last question from our viewers. It comes from Mr. Joash Webb, whose question is, how do you help persons? I mean, after all that has been said in this over discussion, how do you know? I think it's a perfect question, Josh, and thank you very much for this. How do you help persons, teams, stakeholders that do not believe in the importance of sports psychology?
I think we've all experienced that one way or the other. Come across a technical member who may not have had that buy-in. And I do believe that, first of all, it has to be for us as professionals, an educational initiative so people understand what we do. I think a lot of the pushback we get is due to misconceptions about what we do as professionals. And I think that that goes to taking things within our control, just like what Alex just said, is if we take into control how we direct the conversation and the education initiatives that we put out and the information we put out, I think that can be definitely a big door opener so that it's more accepted and more utilized.
Anyone else?
I think what Amanda said is such a really key point. And in our experience, we found that, you would start off and people may be a little bit hesitant, a little bit reserved, but a lot of the times I found it's because members may feel a little bit threatened or, because of the lack of understanding of what we do. They, let's for instance say, for example, a coach may think that we are coming to tell them how to coach. The physio or physical therapist, athletic trainer might think, okay, well, we're going to tell them, no, you really shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing that when you're talking to people. And it's not the case, right? We come in very aware of what we can offer, what we do, and we make sure to respect everyone in their space because we're here to work as part of a team. So we understand and respect that the coach is responsible for this, the physio is responsible for that, and our area of expertise is solely how can we help an athlete prepare optimally mentally to put out their best on the field, and how can we help an athlete to be at their best in terms of a well-being standpoint. And so we generally just try to, as I love to say, stay in our lane. And then when people realize that that's what we're about, they soften up almost instantly.
Yeah.
Well, we at the Futsal Association of Trinidad Tobago certainly recognize what you all do. And we want to thank you for the service that you all have done to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, to every single athlete that you all have touched, including our girls in 2018. Amanda, I want to say thank you publicly for that. On behalf of the Futsal 868 family and movement, we want to say thank you very much to each one of you for being wonderful guests and providing insightful perspective on this powerful topic of sports psychology. We are made of mind, body, and soul. Thus, we encourage each and every one person to protect, grow, and sustain self. So on behalf of the Futsal Association of Trinidad and Tobago, I want to say thank you very much to our guests for being a part of this to this Sunday evening. We actually went over time. We want to say thank you very much for being great troopers. So
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being a great host.
No problem. To Alexandria, Nadine, Amanda, and Jelani, have a great evening, and to your families, wish you all God's richest blessings during this weird time. But nevertheless, we ask safety for and his continuous covering over your lives. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
So that was the team at the the sports psychology team from the sport company of Trinidad Tobago. What an insightful and great session that we had today, which ended the month of May. I'm very much privileged to have such a great team be a part of us. And tomorrow, phase 3 of the reopening of our great country starts. And I am going to ask you all to protect yourselves and our country by purchasing our Futsal 868 branded mask, only 3 for 100. Contact us at 787-7678. That's 78 Sport 787-7678. And we look forward to your support, supporting our movement and our venture. Please be reminded that you can get a recap of our show on the Futsal 868 Facebook page, YouTube channel, and Axe TV. I'm your host, Geoffrey Edwards. Have a good evening.